Hi, this is Chris the Guitar Amp Tech from Sydney, Australia. And today we're diving into one of the most legendary amplifiers in electric guitar history. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the vintage 410 Tweed Fender Bassman. So, the first thing is to see if this is the very rare 5E6 or the Holy Grail 5F6A. So if you're into classic tones, amp restoration, or just love vintage gear, go grab yourself a coffee and let's get into it.
Oh, Dad, sometimes you stretch things out a bit.
The Fender Bassman, in particular the 1959 410 model, is arguably the most important amp in electric guitar history. The Fender Precision bass was introduced in 1951, the same year as the Nocaster. The problem was, for the bass, that there was no specific bass amp. So there followed a succession of Bassman amps, most of them blowing up, either amp or speaker, usually speaker, which started at the 26 watt 5B6 with a gorgeous 15-inch Jensen speaker, to the most famous of them all, the 5F6A, which came out in 1958. As you know, this last Tweed Bassman was the launching pad of the golden era of Fender amplifiers, but also Marshall and all of their derivatives throughout the decades. So is this amp a 5E6, extremely rare, or the more famous 5F6, 5F6A? The biggest change was the rectifier tubes and the phase inverter. So that's where we're going to start our exploration. The 5E6 used dual 5U4 rectifiers to give the amp more clean headroom. Because as you know, a bass guitar sucks so much power, it's so power hungry, that this is why they decided to use two rectifiers, dual rectifiers. So the E-Series in 1956 had this feature decades before Mesa Boogie. But the 5E6 did not use screen grid resistors, which I think are a wise introduction, which came in the 5F6 series that followed. So when we pull out the back of this amp, if we just see one rectifier tube, then it'll either be the famous 5F6, or it'll be, depending on what the rectifier tube is, or it could be the 5F6A. If it's a single type 83 rectifier, and if we see 100 ohm screen grid resistors, then we're looking at a 5F6. But if the screen grid resistors have been replaced with the more protective 470 ohm, and the rectifier is the more readily available GZ34, then we have found the holy grail of the 5F6A. Enough blah, let's take a look.
Yeah, good call, Dad. It's about time we got onto this.
It just looks beautiful, doesn't it? I mean, the grill cloth, if it's original, is just in perfect condition. If it is a new grill cloth, I've got to say whoever did it did a fantastic job. There's not a chance in God's earth that I could ever get these lines as straight as the Fender factory or the person who did this re-grill clothing. Thankfully, he didn't do the Tolex. I quite like this look. Been around town doing gigs for the last 65 more years. We've got a broken handle, no biggie, we can get reproductions of that. But the front of it, beautiful. The side, Also beautiful, looks in genuine condition. Chrome panel, but doesn't that look just in amazing condition? You see modern hot rod deluxes, which have got that white lettering on chrome, and it's nearly all gone. But they knew how to do it back in the 50s. We can see that this is a 5E6. How? 2 5U4 rectifiers. That's the instant giveaway. And yes, we have our little chart, which is just in perfect condition there, which also confirms 5E6. Although quite often you've got to take the charts with a bit of a grain of salt, but it is definitely 5E6 because of those 2 rectifier tubes. We have here 4 beautiful original Jensen speakers. The number on the frame is 220, which is Jensen. 5, which is telling us it's 1955 when the speakers were made, 35th week. And so this amp would be either late 55 or early 56. So you see that the bottom 2 have got the bell covers on. The top 2, for space reasons, do not. This has been serviced, maintained in the past. I like to see the original coupling caps where possible. However, this era of Fender amp had the yellow Astrons, and most of the time they leak. So sadly, they've been replaced, but probably not much choice. The filter caps have been replaced. I prefer it when they're installed in a way that you can read what the capacitor values are. The leads on the coupling caps are nice and straight. The leads on the filter caps are a bit wonky. So I'm just wondering if it was done by the same person. So I might see if I can tidy that up a bit. I'll test everything, of course, and we'll make a call. Now, I'm hoping that we have some original preamp tubes here. Now, this first one should be a 12AY7, and indeed it is. And it's a GE one, so I'm hoping that is not microphonic, because that's a bit of a gem. Well, we like that. And this is another 12AY7, which is correct. Also a GE. The phase inverter is a 12AX7, and this has been replaced. It's a 12AX7 replaced with a Sovtech. Let's have a look at the power tubes. The power tubes are a pair of Sovtech 5881s, same as 6L6, give or take. So I think our first port of call is we're going to test these, and we'll test the 2 5U4s, and we'll see where we go from there. I have the pleasure of working for a very honourable young man called Joel. He owns a business called Joel's Vintage Guitars. And before he sells any vintage amp, he asks me to look it over, make sure it's safe, make sure nothing's going to fail in the immediate future, and that it's above all safe. And so that's what I do. So he says, anything I sell, I don't want coming back in a couple of months with a problem. So I said, you got it. So having said that, I can already see one safety issue here. Here's our mains lead. Yes, it was replaced with a modern 3-pin version, and he has, whoever did it, soldered it to the chassis, which I do like, but I don't think his iron is quite hot enough. So it's not a great solder joint. It's probably okay, but I might just tidy that up a bit. But my real concern is his mains wiring. He has got the active going to the power switch. Good, but wrong order. he's got the neutral going to the fuse. No, I see this in almost every amp that has had a 3-pin plug installed. I don't know why nobody does it. Well, I do know why, because very few people have got any electrical education. You don't need to be an electrical engineer like moi to know what's safe and what isn't, but you do need to know some basic safety rules. And one is you don't fuse the neutral, you fuse the active. In fact, the active wire, the brown one, needs to go to the back end of the fuse first. From the front end of the fuse, it needs to go to the power switch. The power switch then takes it through to the power transformer, which looks very shiny. I wonder if that's been replaced. Quite possible, because it's 240 volts here. And I'm assuming we've got a 240 volt switch. Socket, yes we do. And the neutral should go straight to the transformer. So that's one safety issue that we'll fix up. Let's test these valves. I have an excellent match with the existing tubes in that, 24.1 and 24.4, and almost a perfect match with the transconductance as well. But listen to what I'm hearing. I'll put the mic right up to the tube and see if you can hear this. Can you hear that there is a whistling sound on the other valve? Pretty much dead quiet. I'm not sure if that's going to be sufficiently microphonic to be heard through the amplifier, but we'll just make a note of that tube with 24.1. I might just put a little mark on there. We'll see if that tube's going to be problematic. Hopefully not. This is my old B&K tube tester, and so I'm going to test the 5U4s in this because the other MaxiMatcher won't do some of these tubes. This is great. This is from the day. I think this is 1961, I think. So as you can see, there's two elements to a rectifier tube, like two diodes. So we've selected it to 5 volts, put it into the 5U4 socket, and we're going to now test the two parts to it. Diode 1, about 78, diode 2, near enough. So that one is good. 78, 75 for the first one. That's about 73, 75. Well, they're nice enough match to be used together. All right, we'll check one of these 12A Y7s, and that socket is there. And I've selected 12 volts and a sensitivity of 93 as per my chart for each tube. Just for shorts, that's okay. Grid emissions okay. And triode 1 is 70. Triode 2, we're going to call it 69. That's a pretty good match. Now this doesn't test for microphonics, so that we're going to have to do the old-fashioned way of using our ears. But I now know all of the preamp valves, they're all within. So the first thing I'm going to do is fix up this mains wiring, and then I'm going to resolder that and resolder that. Both examples of not using a hot enough soldering iron. That's it for our scope of work to be done on this beautiful Tweed Bassman. On the next video, let's get that work done.